Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the members of the public who have joined us today. I would like to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the traditional territory of Coast Salish First Nations. Eats Skakip Atanakwel, Tani Ata, Kawatsan Tamoch. Our first item to deal with is the agenda, and Mr. Berry, you have a couple of in-camera.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have somebody in the gallery who would like to be added as a delegation number 3. Her name is Teresa Emery, and this is regarding the siting of the BC Transit garage access to it. You would need to vote to add her as delegation number 3, and it needs to be a unanimous vote. So,
Moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor and opposed? We have none opposed. The motion carries. We have a third delegation.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So then there's 2 new business items in closed session. New business 1 closed is security of property, and closed session new business 2 employee relations.
Thank you. Seeing no board member wishing to add anything else, a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Day. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have the minutes under M1, moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Marsh. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Berry, any business arising from the minutes?
No business arising.
Thank you. We can turn to the public input period and welcome anyone who would like to make a comment on an item on the agenda. You would have 3 minutes if you chose to do so. Ms. Kaufman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. First, I would like to say thank you for adding the delegation number 3 to the agenda this afternoon. This gal tried to be added to the agenda at the last EAC and was denied, so I appreciate that. On one of the items on the agenda today from the EAC minutes is the adoption of bylaw 4204, which was itemized as R8, delegation of authority for the development permit application. I made an appeal to the EASC to not forward this bylaw as it was written, because I firmly believe that delegating the development permits to the office of the general manager takes out the public's ability to comment and be part of a process. It also takes out the history that the public can bring to delegation permits. I also asked if there was, Board of Variance within the CVRD, and I did not get an answer to that. I'll read you my closing statement. Whether at the EASC board or other CVRD committee meetings, we hear the directors talk about the importance of community engagement. The recommended resolution has given you and the community mere days to consider the implications of the proposed bylaw 4204. Please do not abdicate your responsibilities to and when the public's right to be consulted by endorsing this bylaw amendment as written. One of the other things, and we have people here from MOTI, and that's what Teresa's going to be speaking to, is about the subdivision approving office, or when a development permit is approved. We know that the CVRD is trying to take over the subdivision approving officer from the MOTI, and we've been made to believe that this will give the CVRD greater control or influence about what properties are or not going to be developed. But from what I understand from the comments that were made, is that responsibility would rest with the general manager of land use services, and that the directors and the public may not necessarily get that information. It will be done. So there's no public input. Special event temporary use permits or variants, thank you, are not going to be going to the public. And the way the public is notified is also lost. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please. I think the button has to be, there we go.
I'll say that again. Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow board members. Appreciate the fact that Teresa's going to get a chance to speak after being denied last week to address our concerns as neighbors of the Bowl Road Transit Hub proposed site. I've been a taxpayer of Area E for 30 years. I've been landowner to the most significant property adjacent to this transit hub for the last 10 years. Did a very lengthy, very expensive rezoning process that resulted in a unique comprehensive community development zone where we're putting together affordable housing on our site right next door. We are also neighbors to a large property on each side of us, acreages that are the last vestiges of potential affordable housing sites in that area, all of which have to empty into Bowl Road in order to have egress to get out of that property, fire suppression, everything. Haven't even thought about that, fire trucks and 2 buses going on a 20-foot wide road. I don't know how that's going to happen. Anyways, we have a continuous path. I gave 10,000 square feet of my land, a city lot, in order to appease the CVRD and create pathways through my property that all terminate right at the front entrance to this proposed Bowl Road site. So it's kind of got me somewhere in the planning department. The dots aren't connecting here. It's not a smooth or safe flow. So, and I've studied the site. Needless to say, I'm in the design business. Been on the APC for over 15 years. I know this site intimately. It is not an effort, contrary to 2 issues. We're going to be with the proposals coming forward. You'd be eliminating potentially 3 culverts on the Polkey and Bowl Road side and building 1 proper entry-exit culvert on Polkey Road. So that's 3 culverts eliminated. And with today's new technology, we'd be putting in a better quality culvert with an earthen bottom. We wouldn't have to use a round galvanized pipe. So it would be a very natural environment that could be created for this new crossing. And the pathways that are going forward in the proposal would have connectedness for the current community, all off of Eagle Heights that pass through my property and have for, from what I understand, over 75 years. They just cut through our property because it's a natural way to go. And they use my property, and I gladly and I support it. I promote it. I actually landscaped it so that people could get to the market and across the highway to the only footbridge we've got. So, in short, Teresa will present. She's one of my tenants on the site. She has a very successful bed and breakfast in the Robert McClay Jr. home, which is one of our few designated heritage sites in the region. Thank you again to CVRD for helping us through that effort. But she's got some huge concerns. 3 minutes are up. Thank you for your time, and please consider it a little more carefully. There's all kinds of options. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to speak to something on the agenda? Seeing no one else coming forward, we can move on to delegations. And the first delegation, I'd like to invite forward Mr. Mike Pearson and Ryan Evanoff from the manager for transportation, district manager of transportation for Vancouver Island and operations manager. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Can I just escape out of this? I have a short presentation for you.
And we're going to have an overview of maintenance contract renewal process and specific changes for the South Island service area.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, board members. I am the district manager for Vancouver Island. Relatively new in this position. I've been here for the last 11 months. So prior to that, I was an operations manager in Central Island. So, and today, my presentation is regarding our maintenance contracts, which are coming up for renewal. We're currently in the process for across the province, with the first ones that have gone out being Central Island and North Island, which are already well into the process. And maybe I'll just jump off from there. So South Island, our current contract began in 2004. It ended, the 10-year period ended in 2014, and there was a 5-year extension on that contract. Our contract's with Main Road South Island. The original value of the contract was just over $10 million, and the current value is just under $4.3 million. The expiry date of that contract is September 30th of 2019. To give you sort of a sense of the area that this contract covers, it covers all of the southern Gulf Islands and up to Chemainus and all the way up to Port Renfrew. With the contract renewal, there will be a slight adjustment in the boundary. Right now, currently between South Island and Central Island, it's at Panorama Ridge Road, which is at the District of North Cowichan's municipal boundary, essentially. That will be moved south to Mount Sicker Road, so additional 8 kilometers to the south. And this is sort of a more detailed map to give you a sense of, basically, this is our inventory. The colors reflect the various maintenance service classes, but within this contract area, there's 1,600 kilometers of road, about 14,000 culverts. That's a give or take number because there's probably lots out there that we haven't discovered yet. 143 bridges, 51 retaining walls, 10 tunnels, 8 sign structures, and 20 major culverts. A major culvert being one that's over 3 meters in diameter. Stop me at any time with questions.
1 second, please, Councillor Marsh.
Yes,
Yes.
Director Marsh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I forget what your name was, sorry.
Mike Pearson.
Thank you. You mentioned that the current contract stops at Panorama Ridge Road in North Cowichan, but the future one will be at Mount Sicker.
Correct.
So who will be responsible for that stretch? Is it the highway you're talking about?
Yes. So it's just, we don't have any side road, anything off the highway in that area. So that area will now be covered by the Central Island contract,
Okay, not the municipality.
not the municipality. No.
Oh, thank you.
No, it's Trans-Canada Highway.
I got a little bit worried for
We'll
a second.
keep it.
Okay, thanks.
Director Atkin.
Thank you. Can you just clarify what sign structures are?
Sure.
Like
So
what?
a sign structure is just when you see, like down in Victoria, you'd see the sort of the bridge over the highway with all the signs hanging off of it. That goes right over the hot top of the highway. That's a sign structure. It's big enough that it needs to have an engineer look at it.
Thank you. Director Davis.
Thank you, and thanks, Mike. I was wondering about 10 tunnels. What constitutes a tunnel?
10 tunnels. Well, that would be things like, I'm trying to think of one. We have, not in this service area, but we have one in Ladysmith, under the railway. We have one at Helmkin Interchange for the Galloping Goose Trail.
There's one just south of Sprott
Yeah, that's
Road
right.
in
Right at
North
the Municipal
Cowichan.
Hall. Yeah.
They would primarily comprise of our pedestrian sort of.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Okay,
questions?
carry on, please.
All right. So where are we at with contract renewal? Right now, we're in the process of updating our inventory and prepping for the request for proposals. We're at this point, we're looking at the request for proposals, or RFP, being posted for Service Area 1 sometime this fall. And then that will be posted for a period of 8 weeks, 2 months. And then we'd be looking at evaluations of those proposals early in the new year, which gives our new contractor, if it is a new contractor, our new contract, enough time to mobilize before the October 1st start date of the new contract. So there's a lot of changes that I didn't want to get too far into the weeds of the details today, but some of the bigger ones that you'll want to know about with regards to winter abrasive that we use on the highways in the winter. We're moving to a 9.5 millimeter standard for all Class 1 and Class 2 highways. That would be Trans-Canada Highway, Highway 18, Highway 17. It's basically a smaller aggregate the intent, that's new for us. Our standard right now is 12.5 millimeter. So this is quite a bit smaller. We've included additional sweeping on cycle routes. So in our previous standard, sweeping was every 120 days, which equated to about 2 sweeps a year. We're looking now at more 3 and potentially a 4th within a year. And I say that that's designed to be around identified cycle routes. So I'll get to it on my next slide, but that's a place for input. And then improved communications. Basically, what we're looking for our new contract, within our new contract, our contractor will be required to maintain at least 2 social media platforms and be, in addition to our regular stakeholder meetings that they do every season. So a lot more communication with our contractor going forward. And if you're interested, there's a whole lot more information available at our website. So, opportunity for input. Over the last 2 years, the ministry's been working on our maintenance specs and our standards. We've been working through provincial working groups across the province. Those are now set, particularly now that some of the contracts have already gone out. So they're consistent across the entire province. Within those specs, there is what we call local area specifications. So those are things that would be specific to a service area that require something different than what we have within our base provincial standard. I think that would be things like, for example, down in the South Island, around Highway 1, we don't allow lane closures for any sort of maintenance activity during the day. That would just cause terrible backups and just be ridiculous. So we just put that right in. You're not allowed to close lanes during the day. Opportunities to provide comment. Because our standards are set, that's really not up for too much consideration at this point, or it would be a very long conversation. So if there's specific areas of concern, a specific road, a specific way where, there's a road where I think this one should be plowed before this one, or a cycle route that should be identified, or a change in a school route. Those are things that we want to hear about, because those are things that we can work with and work within the existing contract. Yeah. That's my short presentation.
Thank you. Director Morrison?
Thank you, and I'm really glad to have both Ryan and Mike here. I think that I've probably got more questions than time would permit. It's great that we have the opportunity to provide a little bit of input prior to the contract going out, and I would just ask if there would be an opportunity for us to arrange to have you come back for an electoral area service committee meeting before this gets too much further along. Would you be available to do that, so that we could perhaps spend a little bit more time in discussing some of the areas that you brought to us today? So would you be available to come back and have some further discussion?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I see today as sort of the introduction of the opportunity. So we have a few months here, and I expect you guys want to go away and think about that. So yeah, absolutely, we can make ourselves available.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Walker?
Are there any changes to snow and ice control measures for the winter compared to what we've had in the past?
Yes, so I touched on one, the winter abrasive. We've reduced the size on that. We also have, within our spec, changed updated the, I'm trying to remember now. There's, help me out here, Ryan. Below 9 degrees, which we don't often get here, but below 9 degrees, is bare and black within 24 hours. So for all of our Class A highways, that would be Highway 1. Class B highway would be Highway 18. Those are bare and black within 24 hours.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the Malahat and then from here to Lake Cowichan primarily, the main routes.
Yeah, so the same accumulations.
People going to work early in the morning, this sort of thing.
Yeah, so our maximum accumulations have stayed very similar. 4 centimeters on Highway 1. I think it's 6 centimeters on Highway 18. But it's just the time that they have to clear that within has been updated and reduced.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mike. My question, it's always complicated in a regional district, and jurisdiction is always an issue, and now ownership. So we have catch basins, Cowichan Bay Estates, Eagle Shores, that does not, can you clarify, that does not belong to us? I know that our staff, I send pictures, someone please come and help, there's somebody's run over them, or something's wrong with it, or whatever. But it needs to be clearly defined so that I would have a person that when I get the calls, because we all know as area directors, we get the first calls, and then I call you guys or whatever. Those catch basins, and what is the jurisdiction on that?
So essentially, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. We had hi, Ryan Evanoff, Operations
Hi,
Manager,
Ryan.
Southern Vancouver Island. We had a recent meeting here, so at a staff-to-staff level with the Cowichan Valley Regional District folks. I can't give a general answer to that question right now because it depends on the individual circumstances around each individual installed appliance. We are working to identify your question of who has sort of the maintenance responsibility on each one, but it's individually set. There's no overarching on it. There are some that we do take responsibility for, and there are some that we do not. And we're sort of working, like I said, staff to staff level to compile like an appropriate list of those moving forward.
So what's going to qualify? How are you going to get, how,
So what I would add to that is by the time we are ready to go put our contract out, we'll have to have an answer to this.
yeah, because it's quite, that's quite important. I just have a follow-up if I may. Of course, you know, because I'm the garbage lady, so I'm always phoning the 1-800. One guy said, don't call me, there's a 1-800. There is sometimes when I see trucks go by, there could be large bags that sit there for 3 weeks, or a chair or something that's there. You know, just the regular people, anybody going by in a ministry truck should be able to pick those up. That would be Main Road, I guess, or, you know, it just should be an obvious one. I see that quite often. And the biggest thing I keep getting complaints about is the white lines, the lines themselves for bench school, and if it's Cherry Point, and I understand that they'll no longer do white lines on all the roads, the side, and to the school, it's critical, and around the Cherry Point curve, like people just cut the curve and there's kids walking. So I get calls on that often. Will there be defined at least white lines put in or around the bench school area?
I guess those are some of the specifics we'd be looking to hear. I don't know if we want to get into all of them right now, but around a school area, we're obviously heightened to that sensitivity and needing the fog line and crosswalks and all that sort of stuff.
So there will be white lines. I just want to be able to tell them that will there be white lines around bench school?
So I'll jump in there, and I think it's important to clarify that our maintenance contracts and our line painting contracts are two separate things.
Right.
The white lines, so fog line or an edge line, whichever you want to call it, on a side road like that, we are given a quantified plan from the contractor that provides our lane markings. That quantified plan does not equate to every single side road that we have in the service area for repainting. So we do have my ability is to set that quantified plan as to what needs to get done and then shift those quantities around. So we rely on local information from folks like you to tell us, hey, this road needs to get done, and we can put that then into our priority list so that it does get done.
So priority, this would be a good thing to come to electoral area services. I'm sorry for taking up too much time here, but it's pretty critical, the safety of the kids, and of course we get the first phone calls. But so it would be great to actually have Main Road with you as well then, or because what you do is you ask one question to one department and it goes to like, it's confusing.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm still confused who's on first.
Okay, so Main Road doesn't do the line painting as
Okay.
of right now because we have an existing lane marking contract with a company called
Yeah,
La
that's
France.
okay.
So if you have issues surrounding lane markings on any roads, highway or side roads, I'd recommend that you just send a correspondence to your local area manager that we have out of my office, or just send it to myself, and
Okay.
that's the easiest and most direct way to accomplish that.
Okay, and just to quickly follow up, sorry. Cowichan Bay, this would be the same, I think you're aware of the cleaning that we did on the road in Cowichan Bay. The village of Cowichan Bay is completely neglected, whether it's a real challenge anyway. It's a challenge because the ministry owns the road right in the middle of all the stores, and we did spend quite a bit of money and quite a bit of people time and machinery cleaning that. And I was told that you've gone above the obligation of that area. So it'd be good to know what is the obligation there, if we could have a list of, you know, if you've been through it twice, or is there ever any lines? Can there be lines for parking? And, you know, after our charrette, which was mostly on the village and the parking, it would be good to sort of clearly define where we can go next and work together on something, because it's quite a challenge. It's now actually in the village fisticuffs or the danger. I mean, people are parking in the middle of the road now. You guys see it too. So there's the safety issue that is probably the biggest thing, and we've just, by luck, things have not happened.
Yeah, so again, that's sort of something that's outside the jurisdiction of the maintenance contract itself. It's something that we would have to, through my office again, work with you directly. Every individual location deserves kind of its own individual assessment and look-see, and Couch and Bay is an extremely complicated space. And the reason why it's outside the maintenance contract is because that doesn't provide any opportunity for us to do parking. So we have to work on it on an individual basis through signs, or working with a local government or some sort of local group or agency that would oversee it for us. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the Couch and Bay parking stuff, because that's something that we can just sort of work directly with each other on.
I would hope
and then
so.
go from there.
Yeah, I would hope so, because these are just critical issues that have been going on for a long time. And communication is key, so it'd be really nice to be able to do that. But hopefully we can get off on a better foot next time. Thanks.
Thank you. And just before I turn to the next questioner, I just think it could be very valuable to submit comments by email as well. So there was a record of issues and correspondence. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. You guys are really important to us. And I would really look forward to talking to you about some details more at EAFC. But for this afternoon, what I'd like to know is, I get a lot of stuff about road maintenance, and I never have a clear idea of whether it's because you don't have enough resources for the roads to be maintained adequately, or whether there's contracting issues. Have you done an evaluation of the current contract? And are there changes in terms of resources available to do better maintenance or not? Planned.
Planned maintenance?
Yeah, do you think there'll be more resources moving forward, or by going out to tender, do you think we can see a better result?
So we will see a better result in terms of the contract that we've now put together is substantially updated since the 2003 agreement or 2004 agreement. So we're getting that better level of service, and you're sort of talking about two different things. So I don't want to again to go too far, but we have planned work and we have regular work, or routine work as we call it. Routine work, there's no cost associated with that. It's something they have to do. They have to meet certain response timeframes. Quantified work, as we call it, that does have a contract upset value, and so what Ryan's job and our contractor's job is to sit down together at the beginning of every year with input from stakeholders and figure out what the priorities are for that year to work within that quantified plan budget. And what's great about that budget is it can be shifted towards whatever the priority needs to be. So if it's paving, it can go to paving. There's always mowing, there's always brushing, there's sweeping, all those other activities. So it's finding a balance.
I'll just follow up. Well, you and I know that the roads have deteriorated significantly. So now we spend an awful lot of time filling potholes that just open up again. And then when we have a bad winter like we had, and then it takes a full year to get around to fixing. I mean, there's clearly an issue and it's deteriorating. So everyone's concerned about that. And I guess what I'm hearing is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Because there aren't enough resources to go around. So I'm just really concerned about that.
I appreciate that comment. And again, it's a distinction between recognizing that not this last winter, but the winter before was extremely tough on the side roads. That falls outside of regular maintenance. That's beyond what our maintenance contract is intended to do. That now becomes a priority for the ministry, it needs to become a priority for the ministry in terms of investing more paving dollars on rehab paving dollars onto our side roads. So it is a different situation, I guess. It's outside of our maintenance contract.
Okay, thank you, Director Day.
Thank you very much. My question was around line painting and more specifically crosswalks, and now you've directed me how to express that concern, so thank you.
Thank you, Director Dory.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, a question. Is the Central Vancouver Island contract up for renewal as well?
It is, and it's
Okay.
actually quite ahead of the process. That contract ends on August 31st of this summer.
And the second question has to do with potholes. I was talking to a politician from Saskatchewan where they have lots of potholes and harsh winters. And they have machines for patching potholes where they carry the aggregate and they pump it in there and they tamp it down and roll it out, and the potholes stay relatively fixed. We have a pothole in Saltaire that's been fixed at least 5 times this year, one pothole. And so do you specify the type of machinery that they must have to carry out this contract? Or you just let them use a rake and shovel and jump on it with their feet and be done with? Do they have special pothole equipment?
You're referring to a splash and dash, as
Yeah.
it's called. No, we don't direct the contractor in how they do the work. We direct them on response time. So basically, we don't tell them we assume that they know how to do the work professionally and appropriately. If they're backfilling the same pothole every single day because they have to meet the same response time, then that's what they have to do. It's a very inefficient way to do things.
Yeah.
But we don't direct the contractor.
We have a lot of damaged wheels from this one pothole.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Director Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not sure if you know the answer, but you mentioned rehab paving, and I was thinking about the Crofton Road that goes to the ferry terminal and has heavy traffic from the mill.
Yes.
It's been bad for years.
Decades.
And decades, thank you. So the last couple of winters have been particularly rough on it. Is there kind of an impact that you can quantify on your job? I know you don't do the rehab paving, but the fact that it hasn't been done for so long, how does that impact what we're paying? Is there a case to be made that maybe that should be a priority to MOTI because it's costing more for your department to maintain that road than it ought to, or?
Yes, and I'm glad you bring that one up.
Yeah.
It is a priority for the ministry.
Do we have any idea when it might be taken care of?
We're working with the Hull First Nation, and we're working with North Cowichan.
Good.
It's not quite as simple as simply just repaving it as much as we'd like it to be. So
You
we're
have to
working
look at widening it and
a little bit of
repairing it
widening,
and all of that.
lots of base repairs
Yeah.
to fix what's under the road. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Stone, then Director Morrison.
Thanks, Director Dory, for bringing up the Mid-Island contract. So on this specific contract renewal, though, is the direction to relative budget-wise per year, is it going up, down, staying the same?
So each one of the contracts going out has an upset value. So when this RFP goes out, it will be at the $4.3 million cap.
Right, so is that an increase in the budget over the previous contract, the same, up, less, down?
It's the same.
It's the same?
Subject to that annual adjustment, as you noticed in the difference between the beginning and end.
Yeah.
There's approximately a 1% annual
Escalator each year,
adjustment.
yeah. So I was just trying to understand whether the priority was to hold the line or the budget or to find some service improvements. I live in an electoral area in the Mid-Island as well, and find that especially the last mile snow clearing maintenance seems to be an afterthought. So as you get closer to the end of a line, the quality of standards of maintenance, those people seem no less important from my point of view than the people that are in the you know, sort of further up the way, but it seems like that last mile gets very little attention. A lot of, as you called it, splash and dash seems to be the way when you come down to the sort of further ends of a road in an electoral area, and obviously the service standards are lower for those. Yeah, I guess that's it. So the Mid-Island contract following the same thing, not really improving any standards of maintenance, but holding a line on a budget.
Well, holding the line on the budget, but also we've dramatically changed our standards, so they are quite different and improved.
Okay.
We just reallocated, we just moved things around so much within the contract that we're able to find efficiencies.
Okay, so in regards to, you know, roads, I'm pretty sure the roads on our area are probably vintage 1960s. And they're very poor. It looks like a gravel road that's just cement though. Lots of potholes, but they're actually part of the roadway. That's a whole different process to get those looked at in terms of actually repaving them.
Correct. So the process there essentially is we are working within our rehab funding budget for the South Coast region. So that includes the Lower Mainland as well. And basically what we want to know, and when we're looking at developing our programs, is where should we be investing that side road rehab paving dollars? Recognizing we can't pave everything at once, but we have a 3-year program, and we can work within that program.
Okay. So not to throw a little jab in there, but based on what we see, that last mile will probably never get paved because there's only 7 or 8 houses out there. They'll always be kind of further down the list while other more traveled roads rise to the top.
Well, what I would say to that is perhaps not. It's maybe not going to meet the top of our priority list for rehab paving, but we do have other alternatives. We do have chip seal options and other sort of surfacing treatments that we can do either through our maintenance contract or that are not as
expensive.
Not as expensive.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Director Morrison.
Thank you. Just want to report quickly to the board that there was a recent AVICC initiated meeting with their boss, Minister Trevena, and a number of things were discussed. And one of the things that I thought was very important that I think has been lacking is that ability for directors to be able to provide that direct input to not only staff but the contractors, and we pushed hard on wanting to have improved communication so that they've got that local knowledge from the individual directors. So while we didn't get a firm commitment to create a body or a transportation committee from that meeting, I think that it's important for us to just step up and reach out and make sure that they're aware of the information that we want them to know. And sensing we're probably getting close to an end, I didn't want to let Mike leave without telling us a little bit about where they're at on the roadside and rural pathways, because I know Mike's one of the leads on that. If he could, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Thanks again. Yeah, so I'll just kind of recap it if you're not that familiar with it. Basically, we are working with yourselves, the CVRD, the Nanaimo Regional District, the Comox Valley Regional District, and the Sunshine Coast Regional District. We're working with Urban Systems as our consultant to look at roadside pedestrian accommodation. So this is really getting to the crux of regional districts looking to have more pedestrian roadside infrastructure. So pathways, sidewalks, multi-use paths, all that sort of stuff. And up till now, it's sort of been done on an individual basis with each regional district. And what we're trying to do is to combine all the general knowledge out there and the policies and the plans, come up with basically a framework that we can work within of things that the ministry can work with the regional districts on, and maybe things that we're going to be maybe one-off side projects or just not something we can work with. So where we're at with that right now is we had our kickoff meeting with the 4 regional districts back in April. We plan to come out in the next month to each individual regional district and speak directly with staff on all of their priorities, and get together as a group again probably in July, hoping to wrap this study up by the fall. So at this point, September, October-ish.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for answering the questions. Oh, Director Clement?
Just two questions. One is, I'm curious to know if, in the maintenance contract, if there's anything addressing industrial activity on roads that are used heavily by residents as well. There's one near Cobble Hill, but it's actually in Shawnigan Lake, Thane Road, that got pummeled for a good decade by a quarry that's nearby, and it literally had to be falling apart before it actually got fixed. And so, but we also see that out in the west with logging activity. And I'm just curious to know if that's in this maintenance contract, or again, it sounds like that there's maintenance contract and then something else. So that's my first question. And then the other question is, it was my understanding in some reading that perhaps some of those standards and efficiencies that you were talking about would be changing more of the quieter side roads into just gravel instead of being paved. Is that going to be part of this standards change?
No. Short answer. So first question there. No, there's nothing specific to industrial use. That's something we're hopefully catching as quarries and industrial use sites come on, that we're looking at the infrastructure and can it actually handle the impact that business is going to have on it. Otherwise, it falls into our rehab paving program. So it falls to the ministry to find money to rehab that road. And to your second question, no, we're not looking at converting roads back to gravel. It's just not part of the plan. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it, and I understand you will be coming to the Electoral Area Services Committee, so that will be arranged, and you'll have more questions. And as I said, I do advise the board to send their concerns by email. It's always nice to have a written record of those issues. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, we can move to delegation number 2, Ms. Kathy Fielding from the Cowichan Lake Arts and Culture Society. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Board, for allowing us to be here today. As you said, my name is Kathy Fielding. Cowichan Lake Arts and Culture Society encloses the area from Scotts Falls west. I don't think we've included Nitnat yet, but that may just be because we haven't gotten there. I'd like to introduce to you our Secretary Treasurer, Loretta Puckrin, and she has a slide presentation for you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not talking about roads for sure. All I know is whether my car rumbles on them or not. Okay. There it goes. So an easy one for you. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking you to change your rules and regulations or anything that you do.
They said you are welcome.
No, well, our inroads are more mental and metaphysical than physical, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay. So just wanted to say thank you, because it is as a result of what this board has agreed to as far as supporting arts and culture that has created our organization. We would have never incorporated had it not been for CVRD's policy. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the Cowichan Lake area and the characters. I know some of the directors here know that we have a unique bunch of people who have very specific ideas on what they will and won't accept. So it took us a while to get our organization off the ground. Very much a group that doesn't like outside influences of any sort. So to create a society, we took longer than any of the other groups. We had to bring our people together. We gave them a brief of what we were doing, meaning what the CVRD had set aside as far as the criteria. We gathered their ideas through personal interviews, social media. We had a meeting where additional ideas were added to what the people in the community wanted to see our group to do. And then through a democracy, we had people vote. And as you can likely see, there are some that are getting an awful lot of dots and others that were hardly getting any. So it came up with a fairly good consensus. We also asked them to say how important this sort of society was to them. And we've got a fair bit of positive feedback. And then we asked them, how much time are you willing to spend to make this work? And some of the gentlemen were down at the 0 end, and some of the ladies were at the 100% end. So we knew that there was enough support that we could go ahead with this. Then this question is, what do we call it? And the suggestions, there are only a few. We got 20 different suggestions on what we should call it. So again, through social media, we had people vote on all of the 20, and it came down to 2 names. We had a face-off, which I thought was reasonably close, 41 to 59%, but Cowichan Lake Arts and Culture Society was the one that won it. Because of the timing, we waited a couple of months, spent some time on our bylaws, and organized under the New Societies Act, so we didn't have to reapply. There were some very specific concerns that were raised by the various residents. One of the concerns is that Lake Cowichan takes over all the other communities and they don't like it. Whether this is reality or not, that was perception. The other was, oh, so you have another art group in town. So we didn't want to just replicate what was there. As a result, we've incorporated into our bylaws restrictions on the number of fine arts people that can be on the board and the residency requirements, which makes it a bit more difficult at times to get a board, but it is proving that it has given our board a lot better representation and flavor. The other concern was, you know, if a lot of volunteer organizations, you get a couple of people who get behind the group, and that group stays for the next 50 years, and then they decide to retire or move somewhere else, and the organization falls. So we wanted to make sure that there was a constant renewal of the people on the board. Had our first board elected, and the mandate from our first AGM was to create a hub for arts and culture, which is just an information center, a way of communicating, to be an opportunity generator, so not just to tag on to existing things, but to create new events and opportunities for the creative and cultural people, and to secure a physical space, which is going to take longer than we hoped, but we're going to get there eventually. Then we had to communicate with the people, and anybody in our district can tell you that trying to get the word out to the general population in our area is a significant challenge. But we had to let them know that we had incorporated who we are, what our goals were, what we were planning to achieve, how they could be involved, and make sure that they knew we were flexible and that we could change. So we've been using existing venues, Chamber of Commerce, Honeymoon Bay, library postings, anything that we could do within the community. We also have developed a fairly good following on social media. This is our top weekly result of over 1,000 hits. So for a small organization like ours, I'm quite happy with that. We're also developing on our website a calendar of all the community events. So it's not just things that we host, it's everything that's happening within the community. We also have a Facebook page, but that tends to be, I see it this morning and I've forgotten about it this afternoon, so we wanted something more permanent. And part of the Santa Parade, that's Chamber, so we're really becoming a part of the community. Some of the events that we've hosted, last year we did our first Canada Day event, and it was open to all people. The things that we did were things that could be replicated in people's homes so they could get ideas on how to entertain the kids or how to be creative. And we had a good enough response that this is now going to be an annual event. We've joined the Worldwide Photo Walk. I find many people aren't familiar with it. This is, China is not involved, but aside from that, every other country in the world is represented in that local groups pick a location, they meet there, they take pictures within a specific time frame on a specific date that has been set for the entire world, and then you upload your photographs so you can see what is happening throughout the entire world on that particular day. we brought in a nationally renowned dancer to do an introduction to modern dance. I tell you, if she lived here, we would have that happening every week. She was fantastic. And then Brenda Morrison did an introduction to Tai Chi for us. We had an online writing competition. We worked with the Castle Lakeside Players, and we gave an opportunity to some of our members to hang their materials on the walls so that the area where the guests were sitting for the Castle Lakeside Players was dressed up for the show, and that really worked out well both for them and for us. We don't have a home, and we want to work with locals, so we've developed a relationship with the local library. We have since done a number of different events, and these are all free to the people, available on drop-in basis. And as you can see from this picture, we have everyone from kindergarten to retired decades ago enjoying and working with us. And sometimes we have to have an adult as well as a children's version available on the same time. With the success of those, we've then decided to have regular meetings of different groups. So monthly, we have a readers exchange group where people talk about the books they read. We have a monthly artist corner with people who want to learn how to watercolor paint come and they get free instruction. We have a woodworkers group that meets. We have a photographer's corner. In the photographer's corner, there's a challenge every month, and it also has an associated Facebook page. We have a fiber arts group, and they have then since decided to request donations from the community, the odds and sods of yarns, and these are some of the products that the knitters and the people who meet are then creating, and at the end of the year, these will all be given to needy families. We also have opportunities for people to learn the crafts of knitting and crocheting, quilting. A lot of children's activities. We did these corner bookmarks with the kids, and we also did a pet rock session with them. Since we have started this, we've been told through the library group that 2 other libraries have reached out to their local arts and culture group to become involved in the library and to hold events of this sort. So our future is just keep on developing on this base and adding new things. So we have an imagination station, which is a creative course for any adult of any skill level. We're working with CVAC on their youth outreach program because we are not established enough to have our own. So we'll be sponsoring a Cowichan Lake area student through CVAC. We'll be doing acrylic pours, quilting, encaustic painting. Steamroller printing might not be this year because it takes a lot of organization, but we're all really excited about that one. Working with local craftspeople on basket weaving and fiber dyeing. This summer, we're going to have weekly teen challenge. Again, a drop-in free class where we're going to be encouraging people to create with found objects. And we're also going to be teaching them how to do stop motion. We've got resurrection of old radio plays in line. This community art project, you start off with a white room. Think of a large playhouse, all white. And every day when you come into the library, you're going to be given a strip of dots, and you get to place your dots wherever you want in the room. So at the end of the summer, the white room should end up looking something like this, a pointillistic landscape. And that'll be held at the library as well. We're planning on working on some medicinal herbs with an actual walk through the forest to see what's available and what the local plants are like. Our challenges, an approved public art plan. So we've contacted various places like Chemainus about what their public art plan is and how they're working. One of the things that has been told us very strongly is it's fine to have public art put out there, but unless you have methodology in your plan on how to maintain it and keep it updated, don't ask us about putting it up in the first place. So that will all be put together, and we're planning on having a complete plan this year to give to town council and to the UBO area people and say, okay, this is what we're proposing, critique it, and then let's adopt it. Because right now people are doing it's better to ask forgiveness than to ask approval basis. And what it ends up being is you just have a hodgepodge, and we'd like to make it a bit more unified. A permanent home is really, really important. When you consider all the things that we've done without a permanent home, just think of what we can do once we get a place that we can call our own. So if anybody knows of a public building that's available or can be made available, there are grants available for the development of an arts and culture spot from the federal government, so we can see about bringing money to that. But please do let me know. So bottom line is just to say thank you for both the funding, your guidelines, and all the support.
Well, I want to thank you. It's really inspiring to hear what you've done and use the money that's come to you. It's just wonderful, and you've obviously been very busy. Director Stone.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And we're the lowest funded group of all of yours.
I'll just throw that in there.
I don't know if that's a road to success. So.
Yeah, I was really happy to see what you've been doing, and it's sort of my second home. My parents and my in-laws live there, and we live in Ladysmith, of course, and Ladysmith Arts Council has become one of the most influential, well, by far the most influential cultural organization in our community, and one of the greatest economic drivers. So they started out much like you guys are now, but then got a space and developed the gallery and developed the classes and the studio spaces, and then the events that they put on, the Arts on the Avenue and the Light Up the Night and all of those things. So seeing you guys go down sort of a road that's been successful with other arts councils is really exciting. And I think that we're just finally getting around to a public art strategy this year with the Arts Council. So don't fret. I think that once you get there, but you're very right. You know, when you're doing public art and you want to sort of bring a certain sameness and cohesion to what ends up in your public spaces, I think it's really important. But congratulations, it's really exciting, and I look forward to, with what seems to be such a great renewal in Lake Cowichan, it seems to be a great time to invest your energies in that same space, right? So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo. No? Director Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and wow, thank you. What struck me so much beyond the pure pleasure of seeing the things that people have produced was that you are truly building your community in a way that connects the hearts. We've been doing a lot of talk about affordable housing, and we know that a lot of folks that don't have a lot of income have moved down your way over the last decade or two, and to see that you're including people without cost from preschool to, I couldn't quite see how many ages old they were. But
in the 80s.
it's really, I was like, wow, I wish I lived in a community that kind of stuff was happening. And there is a lot of arts happening in Chemainus, but not like that yet. So I'm going to suggest to our group that they connect with you, because there are a lot of lonely folks out there. And, you know, in a number of surveys in the nonprofits I've been liaison to, that's what people are saying, we don't feel connected. So you're connecting through joy and art, and I just thank you for doing that.
We have a lot of fun, but you know, we don't check your card to see where you live when we hold the
Yeah,
classes.
I was just thinking I
come
have
on
a
down.
Prius, or maybe I could get that electric bike and come down the path one day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Director Day, then Director Morrison.
I remember about 4 years ago when we all sat around this table and debated whether we were going to go ahead with this type of funding for these kind of groups, and Loretta and I think, got together a few times during that process. And you've made me kind of proud today. So congratulations. Please take that back to the group.
Yeah.
Well, no, seriously.
Hey, it is his fault. He's the one that twisted my arm, so.
And I admire the persistence, especially yourself, Loretta, because we do have some public buildings that we could lend out, but unfortunately they're tied up with bureaucracy right now, and we hope to get there one day. And I just admire what you've managed to do with the resources you have and where you do them. So congratulations.
Thank you. And did someone get that in the minutes?
I think we all heard it.
Okay, great.
Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to say thanks to a few people, and I want to acknowledge Mr. Elzinga and some of the staff at the Island Savings Center, and also this board for taking a bit of a leap of faith and suggesting that this made sense for the whole region. And when, this is kind of funny, but I think I really want to extend thanks to Loretta, because there was an initial meeting, and I attended the initial meeting, and I think others, and Bob was involved, and it was important for the people that assembled to create this group to be able to assemble and have their ideas come up, and without the direction or influence of elected officials, and so walked away. And Loretta and others that were instrumental in you know, sort of gathering everybody together and saying, what do we want, what would we like to see, and obviously this has been very successful, and I'm sort of learning a little lesson in this, because it's sort of what happened with the Cowichan Lake and River Stewards. We attended the first meeting and then walked away, and it's been very successful. So maybe there's a message in that we helped to get it started and then let people go and do their thing, and great work on this, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, give us a regular budget. Give us a way we can increase the budget if we have special projects. And if we don't care enough to do it. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is, don't give a lot of money and then walk away?
But allow us to apply for additional funds for special projects.
Yes.
That's important, so that we
Okay.
can dream big.
Thank you. Director Kuhn.
Thank you, Loretta, for your persistence and your hard work. The Yubo School is sitting empty. Have you looked at that at all? It's a large building. It might be too big.
It is. We've looked at the plans. We've come up with a plan of what we could do. In my estimation, especially with the roof concern, it's $1 million project to get it off the ground so that we can start functioning in there. And I was told that there was a deadline of last fall, or the school board was looking at selling it outside of the concern. So at that point, we had to say, we can't accumulate $1 million to get it done. But if it's still available and there's a way we can work together, I would love to see that as an arts center, as something like the MISA, if any of you are familiar, the Metchosin Summer School of the Arts. We could have something like that full-time happening, because we've got all of the arts. So we've got the musical things as well as the fiber and arts and all of this sort of thing. There was talk about putting a community garden and incorporating a sculpture garden in with the community garden in one of the open spaces there. And underneath the building, we could put in a permanent art gallery, which this area does not have.
Well, let's have a talk about that. I know they've been talking about listing it for sale, but they haven't. And they've always been hoping that some group will come up and maybe lease it, but it's always fallen apart. So let's have a chat about that.
Okay.
Thanks.
I've identified 156 opportunities to get grants for that particular project, so one of them should happen. Okay, we'll get together.
Okay, I would just, on behalf of the board, like to thank you again. Great news story. Much appreciated that you took the time to come today and tell us about it. Thank you.
And we'll give you an update next year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And our third delegation is Teresa Emery. Please come forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak today. I beg your indulgence a little bit. I'm not a PowerPoint presenter, and I'm not a speech person, so I had to juggle between 3 minutes of public, input versus a presentation. So it's going to be a little bit disjointed. I prepared a letter to enter into the public record, and I have a few packages of the handout. They're slightly different than what I presented last week. So I spoke here last week regarding the planned BC Transit facility, requesting consideration be given to Polkey Road instead of the primary entrance that stands only 5 meters from our gate. There was a lot of sympathy, and I'm grateful for that and the opportunity to speak today. What I learned is that we, and I mean the residents as well as the board, don't have a lot of say in the development permit process, and we consequently end up with an unsatisfactory result. We have a lot of unhappy neighbors that are happy with this plan, and the CVRD, which is essentially a partner in this project and the overseer of the official community plan, could have done a better job to see that this facility was better integrated and compatible with the surrounding community. To the Ministry of Transportation, I want to say that you made an error approving Bull Road because you've included plans for a 1.5 meter widening. I think the assumption was made that since there's already 3 gates exiting onto Bull Road, that this road must be better suited than Polkey, but you failed to consider the substantial differences that traffic, the level of noise outside of business hours, and the negative impact on the neighbors. Since the narrowness of the road necessitates widening by 1.5 meters, we now face laying fresh toxic asphalt even closer to the fish-bearing stream north of Bull. And may I point out also that the edge of the road to the actual ditch is only 0.5 meter, so we have to recover that remaining meter on the north side of Bull Road, which is going to cut drastically close to a whole row of parked vehicles, and I'll actually show you on the slide. To BC Transit, I want to say I hope you come to the table and try to address my concerns. You are surrounded by unhappy neighbors, and you should address that. We have to coexist, and your plans affect us negatively for a long time to come. For my bed and breakfast business, my guest experience is surely going to be diminished, and that is going to have an impact on my bottom line. I'm not here to argue that you go elsewhere, but moving your entrance would truly mitigate the impact on my business as well as your other new neighbors. For me, I can get used to the noise, but my guests and my business cannot. So I'm just going to go through the slides, see if I can. Oh, I've already forgotten. Okay, so that's obviously a picture of the front of our house. This picture here is taken out of the rear from my kitchen window, and the 2 stars, it represents me at the point of my kitchen, and the back star there is exactly the entrance where these buses are going to be entering and exiting each day, as early as 5 a.m. and up to midnight is my understanding. So this is the overview, and again, we've got this star point here is, oh, don't I have a cursor on there? Okay. All right, that left star. That's the main entrance that BC Transit proposes to be using. And this, kind of band thing is showing how the noise is going to travel from, although we've got a berm along the green space, the noisiest point is where the buses are coming and going. They make that noise, that bus noise. And this is, my bedrooms are all on the left and I'll face that direction. This is the narrowness of Bull Road. My car's on the right there. It's only 1.8 meters wide, and the buses are 2.5, 2.6. Now, so I understand that Ministry of Transportation had approved that 1.5 additional meters. You can see how close we are to all of these parked cars, and there are cars there day and night. So this is a picture of my foot, the yardstick, and at 0.5 meter, we're already well into the creek bed. So, and this is an additional picture on showing the parking on that north side of Bull Road. So I guess my question was, how do we preserve this stream, add the pathway, which is 3 meters, widen the road 1.5 meters, and then we have to put in all these large trees that are as high as 70 meters in order to maintain the integrity of the soil? It just doesn't seem to be a feasible fit. And this is just some more pictures. Our property is absolutely stunning. We have so many trees, and they are just absolutely gorgeous. That's just showing towards the front of the house. And the pathway, Dave Colson earlier mentioned that he had to do this trailway, and this is a pathway. You can actually see on the top left, you can see a vehicle up on Coax Isla Road, but it is just surely beautiful, and about 15 degrees cooler there in the summer, which is nice. And just a reminder that house was designated by the CVRD as a heritage property. I don't know, so maybe 6 or 4 or 5 years ago. And then I just have some additional points that came mainly from my presentation last week, and also including this clip from the Area E's official community plan, which shows that when you are planning to revise in light industrial, we have to make all these considerations for the adjoining properties, and it is a failure that we don't have any input as adjacent residents into this process. BC Transit does not have to. They're the only ones that don't have to comply with noise bylaws. They're excluded. But I think the intention of that exclusion isn't for the bus facility. It's for the neighbors, so that we can run buses up and down in front of somebody's street and they don't have a legitimate cause to complain. But I really feel that I do. And I would invite Ministry of Transportation BC Transit and yourselves to see that this kind of thing doesn't happen. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yes, Director Jackson.
Thank you very much for just your denial. That was a very good presentation. Thank you. I know this is coming up later on the agenda, and my other concern too around the narrowness of Bowl Road is that with SB Windows and Doors right there on the corner, you've got the big transport trucks coming in and parking on Bowl Road while they unload windows and doors for that business. And sometimes they're there for some considerable period of time. So it's not just a question of buses coming around the corner on a nice wide road. There's going to be employee parking, resident parking, and transport trucks there on a frequent basis. So I think that's going to add to the problem.
Oh, indeed. That's absolutely the case, and they do take up at least half of the road. They might be a little bit piggy and could, tow in on just a little bit on that north side, but they need a significant turn, to get in and out. So, yeah.
Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Yes, I was the one that last week, Electoral Area Services, but they did get a chance to speak many times, so I just wanted to correct on that point. But whose authority, can I get this through staff, the authority for this and the road, where do we fit in in the regional district?
Mr. Crothers, are you able to answer that question?
I think, you want to take this one, Ross? I'll let Ross Blackwell take it.
Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you. The road in particular is within the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. The CVRD has no relationship to that jurisdiction. With regard to jurisdiction over this specific project, it's debatable whether the applicant BC Transit even needed to make an application, given that they are an agency of the province. Hopefully that satisfies both those questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone? Director Jackson?
So what does that mean? Does that mean that we don't have any weight to a request, or through the chair to Mr. Blackwell, does that mean that they get to decide and we don't get to have input now that these concerns have come to us? I'm not sure what you're saying, sir.
Mr. Blackwell?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly the CVRD is in the position to ask BC Transit for certain consideration, but it has no authority to require anything. With regard to the issue that this relates to, it's with regard to a development application, in particular a DVP, it's a development variance permit and development permit. And from a technical perspective, the applicant has satisfied all of the conditions to a reasonable degree that are set out in the development permit guidelines. So at a technical level, there's no further requests that staff could have legitimately in relation to that process. But that said, although there's no jurisdiction per se, there's always the ability to ask.
Okay, so when this comes up on the agenda, we can discuss it maybe at that time, what our options are.
I think that would be the appropriate time. Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to come in today and express your concerns. We do appreciate it.
And thank you very much.
Okay, moving to the report of the chairperson. First of all, I would like to turn the microphone over to Director Yanni DiNardo, who has something that she would like to present. And
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to fellow board members. This is something that I've been thinking of for quite a while, and we as a board have been discussing. And I just thought before our term ended in October that I would like to acknowledge that there are two people that are sitting on our board that have sat on our local government, one on electoral area services and on our board for over 20 years. So I think that's an opportunity to really say thank you and congratulate them. And I wanted to separate them out and have a chance to do that today. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for putting me on as a chairperson's report. So I'd like to call up, first of all, Sharon Jackson and Mary Marcotte. The two of you have been in local government for a long time, and I really I appreciate your time and your energy and wanted to acknowledge you and buy a basket that I had made for you. So this is from all of us, and just acknowledging your grateful contribution to our communities. So I'm just going to. Thank you so much, Mary.
And how appropriate is that we have two managers bearing, male managers bearing baskets?
Thank you, thank you.
I, of course, would like to say a full speech, but I'm one for every year I'm there. But I do thank you all, and I do appreciate every one of you, and I think that each board has their own way of doing things, and sometimes it takes a lot of work to figure out the new board from the old one. So thank you very much, and what a great honor.
Here you go.
Thank you, Director Marcotte.
I'll put it over here. No, it's quite heavy, but.
Thank you so much. This is completely and utterly unexpected. I recall when I was first elected back in 1996, the morning after the election, I thought, oh God, now I have to work with these people. And so it's true. And then, of course, 22 years later, I'm still working with these people. But it's been some of the most fun of my whole life. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve. So thank you very much, and thank you for the wonderful surprise.
Thank you. And thank you to Director Yanni DiNardo for taking the initiative and putting the things together. Our next item on Chair's report is something that came through to me as an email from a citizen who has actually made a lot of contact with us. But she looked at the language in the question period and public input procedure policy. And as soon as she made her comments, it immediately reflected what I heard from Director Nicholson about the volunteer policy, about the kind of language we use. And to me, the language is very almost, dictatorial or schoolmasterish. And this person had suggested that we look at something that was far more friendly and welcoming, while still expressing the important points that we have to make when somebody comes forward. So I just wanted to bring this forward to you to ask for you to give me direction to work with Mr. Berry on some more welcoming language in the policy. And if you give me that direction, we'll do it. It won't be a big thing, but just something we will. Thank you. Seconded by seconded by Director Marsh. Yes, Director Marsh?
Yes, the same individual sent me her ready copy that I thought was really well done. So I hope that you'll look at that.
Well, that's what we have. We will make sure that we have the
She did
appropriate
graphics
information
and
in there.
everything, yeah.
Well, I
Graphics
sure
and
hope it's going to be gender neutral.
Yes, it will. Okay, thank you for that. And our third item, call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And third item, I would like to ask Director Davis to just fill us in on the new ICF president.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Follow up to my report from the last board meeting. After the AGM, the board has a closed meeting, and every year they vote a chair and vice chair. And this year, the chair will be the Cowichan Valley Regional District's appointee, Mayor Phil Kent, and the vice chair will be Judith Sayers. So a reverse from last year, and I know it's in good hands with them. If anybody would like, I know everybody around this table should be getting the email updates, including this board meeting notes, but if anyone from the public would like it, it's at islandrail.ca.
islandrail.ca. Thank you, and thank you for that update. Okay, we can move to committee and commission reports, and starting with Director Morrison, Electoral Area Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask a report from our Electoral Area Services meeting of May 16th and ask if there's any items in 1 through 9 that committee would like pulled.
Director Nicholson?
Okay, we'll get to that in the next.
Is it number 8?
No.
It's 3-meter public trail. So
No.
is it an
It's
electoral
in
area?
the next batch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so seeing no other hands up, carry on.
So with that, number 1, grant aid electoral area B, Shawnigan Lake, in the amount of $500 to be provided to the South Cowichan seniors to support the purchase of a defibrillator at Cobble Hill Hall. 2, grant aid electoral area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $500 to be provided to Cowichan Bay Improvement Association to support Low Tide Day and their 20th year celebrating the estuary. 3, grant aid electoral area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $500 provided to Francis Kelsey Secondary School Dry Grad Committee in support of the 2018 Dry Grad celebration. 4, that a grant and aid electoral area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $300 be provided to the South Cowichan seniors to support the purchase of a defibrillator for Cobble Hill Hall. 5, that a grant and aid electoral area E, Cowichan Stations Atlanta Glenora, in the amount of $100 be provided to Francis Kelsey Secondary School Dry Grad Committee again to support 2018 Dry Grad celebration. Number 6, that a grant and aid electoral area F, Cowichan Lake South Scotts Falls, in the amount of $2,300 to be provided to the Honeymoon Bay Volunteer Firefighters Association to support fundraising efforts for the purchase of automatic electronic defibrillators, AEDs. 7, 1, that the CVRD apply for a gravel removal permit for the mouth of Sutton Creek. 2, that the CVRD partner with the Sutton Creek community to implement the gravel removal under contract for services arrangement. 3, that a long-term sediment management strategy be developed in partnership with the landowners in the watershed as time and budget permit. Number 8, 1, that a 3-meter wide public trail statutory right-of-way be registered in favor of the regional district over the eastern portion of Lot 2, Range 7. No.
Speaking to Bull Road, and it's also 8.3, so I'm just confused, because it talks about BC Transit in 8.3.
I believe these are works on the project. The item then,
If it's proper to go, I'm confused why when a director asked if we could pull it.
item 16.
Thank you, through the chair. So the item that you are referring to is in relation to a Parks Trail right-of-way, I believe, and that's within the right-of-way on Bull Road and on Polkey Road.
Is it related to the transit project, Mr. Blackwell?
There is a relationship to the transit project, but I believe that the trail connection is not solely dependent on the transit.
Can I ask one more question, Mr. Chair? So if this was to pass, could it in any way negatively impact the board's ability to change the location of the transit from Bull to Pokey as they should so choose to?
Thank you through the chair. That's hard for me to say with any specificity. Of course, that would be an engineering study that would have to ascertain whether or not, or the extent to which there would be an impact. Normally, something like that would be a culverted situation for a stream or watercourse of this size, and a driveway access constructed over the top. So I can't imagine it would be significantly different than that, but I can't tell you with certainty without that engineering confirmation.
Before I go to other people who are raising questions, I am going to suggest that we pull number 8 to be discussed separately and ask Director Morrison to carry on.
Item 9, the BC Transit be requested to consider allocating remaining contingency funds at the completion of the transit maintenance facility project towards pursuing options to daylight the drainage culvert across Maplewood Park. 10, that the budget for Function 575 Engineering Services be amended to 1, increase capital vehicle and machinery 60,000, 2, increase transfer from operating reserve by 63,000, increase vehicle insurance by 1,000. Number 4, increase vehicle purchase repairs by $500. 5, increase vehicle purchased maintenance by $500. 6, increase vehicle fuel and lubricants by $200. 7, increase vehicle and equipment parts by $300. And 8, increase vehicle tires by $500, and I move those items.
Thank you. I have a seconded by Director Davis. Any question on these? All in favor and opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving back to number 8.
8.1, that a 3-meter wide public trail statutory right-of-way be registered in favor of the regional district over the eastern portion of Lot 2, Range 7, Quamitchin Land District, VIP 20956, in the Coxila Business Park owned by the province of British Columbia. 2, that a permit to construct agreement be approved with the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure to build and maintain roadside pathway on the south side of Bull Road. And 3, that an unregistered easement between BC Transit and the CVRD for drainage across Maplewood Park from Lot 2, Range 7, Quamitchin Land District, VIP 20956 to Polkey Road be approved. And I move that item.
Seconded by Director Acton. Director Jackson.
Thank you very much. Speaking specifically to, I'm going to be voting opposed to this, to item 2, there wouldn't necessarily need to be a roadside pathway. I don't honestly, I'm not an engineer, I get that. But I don't believe that road is wide enough for a roadside pathway on the south side of the road and have room for buses and trucks and cars, that we wouldn't even need to do number 2 if the entrance and exit were placed somewhere else, either on the closer to Pokey Road or down at the end of the lot itself on the south side. So 2 wouldn't even be necessary in that case if the entrance were moved.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Crothers has suggested to me that we might delay the decision on this until the electoral area directors make their decision farther on in the agenda. So if we can postpone this, agree to postpone this and come back to it, that might be more productive.
I move that, is it postpone or refer?
Table.
Postpone to table this to the electoral area services.
Table this motion until after the electoral area director's consideration, seconded by Director Walker. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Director Morrison, back to you.
Electoral area directors only. Number 11, that application number 05-B-17 DVP 1590 Rich Hand Way to vary section 8.6 sub B sub 3 in order to reduce the rear parcel line setback from 4 meters to 4.1 meters be approved. 12.1, that development permit application number 16-D-17 DP 1841 Pritchard Road for a 3-lot subdivision be approved. And 2, that a restrictive covenant be registered on title for the 3 proposed lots to restrict construction in accordance with 1, the recommendations outlined in section 4 of the Ecological Consulting Great Blue Heron Nesting Assessment Report dated October 10th, 2013, and 2, the recommendations outlined in the RISIC geotechnical letter dated May 19th, 2017, and 3, that the General Manager of Land Use Services be authorized to permit minor provisions under the OCP number 3605. Number 13.1, that development permit application number DP 18D06 1735 Wilmot Road be approved, and 2, that General Manager of Land Use Services be authorized to permit minor revisions. 14.1, that application number 02-D-17RS 4831 Trans-Canada Highway be referred to staff to undertake a detailed analysis of a new hybrid zone intended to transition from specifically auto-related uses. 2, that a community meeting be held on application number 02-D-17RS 4831 Trans-Canada Highway. Number 15.1, that official community plan number 4210 applicable to electoral area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls be forwarded to the board for consideration of first and second readings. 2, that referrals set out in the May 16, 2018 Electoral Area Services Committee staff report dated April 26, 2018 be accepted. And 3, that open houses be held the same day as the scheduled public hearing with the directors from electoral areas F, I, H, and A delegated to attend the meeting.
And we recommend you stop there.
16, yes, and I move those items.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Clement. Any question on these? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 16, 1, that development permit application with variance application number 10-E-17 DP 5271 Bull Road be approved and issued following receipt of information confirming that light spill onto adjacent residential properties is at approximately 0 lux at the south and west property lines and that glare has been minimized. 2, that section 5.18 of zoning bylaw number 1840 be varied as follows. 1, the setback from watercourse A, Schweiksilla, Busy Place Creek, Polkey Road Ditch is reduced from 29.16 meters to 15.3 meters, driveway and parking areas, and 24.8 meters main building. 2, that setback from watercourse B1, Bull Road Ditch is reduced from 23.55 meters to 9 meters. 3, that setback from watercourse B2 along west property line is reduced from 20 meters to 6.8 meters, concrete slab fuel tank, and 9.5 meters fuel bay, wash bay building. And 4, that setback from watercourse C south is reduced from 20 meters to 2 meters, future parking area and site development. And 3, that the General Manager of Land Use Services be authorized to permit minor provisions under OCP number 1490, and I move that item.
Seconded by
Point of-
Director Marcotte. Director
Should-
Jackson?
I beg your pardon. Should this also not be pulled because it's directly in relation to what we have been recently talking about, or
No, this is
a
the
different-
key motion that we are withholding the other decision until this has been dealt with by the electoral area directors. Yeah, so this is the key decision on the development variance, development permit application. Director Marsh?
Just have a few questions if I could. When we saw the, how does this differ from the original development permit application to put this facility there? Was that where the?
This is the original, there is not another, I don't think.
So did this not come to the whole board at some time? Because I know the whole board
This is
has
a land
voted
use.
on, so we voted on a portion of this. probably the money part to do the bus, but we don't oversee, okay. So I couldn't understand why I've talked about that in a different context. Got it. So I learned something every time I come here that I didn't know before.
Thank you. Director Nicholson? I'm sorry, Director Walker, then Director Nicholson.
I just wanted to be you to clarify for me, because it's a land use issue, only the electoral area directors will be voting on this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Nicholson?
Right, so my question is, this is a development permit primarily to do with riparian issues and the lighting issue. And I understand that Ministry of Highways will take a second look at the Bull Road. And so my question is that second look going to affect, if we approve this as it is that second look, if there are changes to the, proposed to the entrance by Highways, would that affect this?
Mr. Blackwell, can you answer that question? Will any possible change to the road access impact what is being decided here?
Thank you. Through you, ordinarily I would suggest that a simple driveway access would not unduly impact the nature of the decision and would fall reasonably within the authority kind of delegated to the general manager for a minor amendment. I think this would satisfy a minor amendment should, as I say, MOTI choose to come back with a revised driveway location. That would be different, however, if in determining a new driveway location there were some substantive changes somehow to peripheral aspects of the development permit application, but I wouldn't anticipate at this point any peripheral implications.
So if I understand Director Nicholson's question, would passing this motion then probably not have an impact on the province reconsidering or the Ministry of Transport reconsidering the location of the driveway?
Normally, no.
Director Nicholson, is that where you were?
Well, I know time is of the essence for this project, so I don't want to hold it up unduly, but I do appreciate the fact that Mr. Evanoff has said that he will look into this. So if there is any opportunity to have the driveway, the access point changed, I know that the residents would be really appreciative. And I think the same question applies to the park trail issue. If we pass that today, is that, I mean, presumably we could always change these later if we had to. And it seems to me that it would be a good idea to pass it today so that we're not holding it up if we don't need to hold it unnecessarily. I don't know if I'm making sense.
I think you are. Thank you. I have Director Dory next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering whether, first of all, whether 2 weeks, which would be electoral services and then a board, it would be enough to hold the project back to a great degree or not. So that's my first question. And do I have an answer from the staff, whether
Mr. Blackwell?
Or BC Transit?
Thank you. Through you, I can't speak to the specifics. I do understand that time is absolutely of the essence, but I would also suggest that from a staff perspective, they have satisfied all the requirements set out in the development permit area. So it would be hard for staff to understand where the opportunities would be that in respect to a legitimate discussion of other considerations, given that they have brought forward a professional representation of the solutions that were required by the development permit guidelines.
And the second question, I think we have some jurisdiction when it comes to an entrance to a property, or we can make recommendations as to an entrance to the property when we have a development.
Mr. Blackwell is indicating that that's not true.
the final say goes to Ministry of Transportation. But I've been here before, and we have made recommendations about entrances to properties. And the Ministry of Transportation did consider what we said. So I think I wasn't at the meeting. This puts me at a further disadvantage. I wasn't at the meeting when this was discussed, and so I'm unclear what the picture looks like when it comes to entrances or uses of the road. So that puts me at a disadvantage when it coming to vote on this, because I'm not completely clear.
Thank you. Director Kuhn?
Well, unless there is an incredible urgency in doing all this, as long as we're not quite clear as to how we want to proceed with that previous application, I would hold everything else off that even has a remote influence on that. I mean, I can't see why we should go ahead with this now if there's a possibility that in the end it'll be a detriment to what we're trying to do, and then we'll have to revisit it again. I would just hold the whole thing off and say, well, let's deal with that issue first and then proceed from there on.
Thank you. Director Acton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We looked at this, deliberated this for a long time at Electoral Area Services, and BC Transit was here. I think we could just add a friendly amendment at the bottom saying that if they can, to reiterate, we did ask them to consider changing the entrance. If we just add an amendment at the bottom with a preferred, we do not have the, my understanding is we don't have the jurisdiction to say make any demands. So at least if we approach it in a friendlier way, we might be heard. And maybe also to add a bit of consultation with the community. I know that was one question that I was asking that they said they do not do. So we could ask for something on those two regards, and I'd be happy to create a
Okay, I'm just going to turn to Mr. Blackwell. I'll come right back to you. Mr. Blackwell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd look for confirmation from Mr. Barry on this, but should there be a desire on the part of the board to, and also as Director Nicholson said, request that BC Transit take another look at the Pokey Road opportunity, perhaps that could be a separate resolution following, what did I say? MOTI, yes. It could be a separate resolution.
And that's a good suggestion. I think I'll return to Director Acton after this if you're comfortable with that. I have Director Davis. Did you have your hand up before? I'll come to you later then.
Sure.
Director Clement.
Would staff be able to tell me how many buses a day are we talking about that are coming in and out of this entrance?
Mr. Wakefield? Wakeham. Wakefield is Wakefield is the noise consultant.
That's correct.
Mr. Wakeham, carry on.
That's not my cousin. Mr. Chair and Directors, the question of how many buses, a study that was just done by the current operating company says from Monday to Thursday, there's 25 buses leaving the yard, 25 coming in. On Fridays, it's 27. That's the current status of the buses today.
Thank you for that.
So with that information in mind, we need to remember this is an industrial park where industrial activities happen. In the I-1 zoning, petroleum storage could occur, a dog kennel could occur, which I would imagine would be much more disruptive throughout the day. Auto repair, processing of wood products, or a welding shop. As someone who has an industrial park in their area who has these interface issues all the time, unfortunately it's a bit of tough luck. I'm really honest about this, is when you move next to the airport, you can't complain about airport noise. 26 buses for 10 seconds leaving, you're talking minutes of the day, and these other activities could be just as disruptive if it was developed into another activity. And we've deliberated, and the unfortunate case is that we have something in close proximity to an industrial park, but we need to move forward. Time is of the essence, and it's just that reality. And the current zoning would have allowed things that were way more disruptive for this whole day and possibly around the clock. I live next to a truss plant that is on 24-hour cycles where I hear nail guns all the time, and the siren to tell when breaks are. And that plays throughout the day, and it's definitely on my list of renovations to improve my windows. But I know that that plant employs almost 100 people. So it's just part of being in the neighborhood. And sometimes it just doesn't work in our favor. So we need to move forward instead of dilly-dallying on this.
Thank you. Director Morrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was very well discussed at committee, and I just want to make a comment in that, you know, there's millions of dollars of grant funds at stake here. It's an incredibly tight timeline. I don't mean to be mean-spirited or you know, cruel in this, but you know, I've attended the affordable housing open houses, and people are wondering why it's so difficult to get things done in the regional district. And it's something as straightforward as a development permit where the applicants, who in this case may or may not have had to come to us, are being further delayed when they have met the requirements of the development permit. And I would suggest that the fallback position, because we've got it in the recommendation, is that the general manager can make minor revisions according to the development permit. So we've got the safeguards in there, but I think it's time that we proceed with this project moving forward and approve this, and if a subsequent resolution comes forward that there be consideration for moving the entrance, then that can be a subsequent resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Davis?
Thank you. I just agree with Director Morrison.
Thank you. Director Kuhn, then Director Nicholson.
Well, it's not 26 buses, it's 52 movements. So, you know, if you have 26 buses and they go in the morning, you come back at night, it's not just 26 vehicles, it's 50. So I'm in favor of reviewing this.
Thank you. Director Nicholson?
I think the question is whether this, putting this off for 2 weeks, I guess it would be, 3 weeks, if it's going to jeopardize the project, and I guess that's a question for Mr. Wakeham. I really think it is important to understand that while this is currently an industrial area and is zoned as such, we're always in transition, and we have an affordable housing issue, and there is a lot of affordable housing opportunity in that particular area. So we need to think about how we can reduce conflicts with housing and make it a more of a friendly mixed-use area. So I really think it would be important to take a second look at that if Ministry of Highways, Ministry of Transportation is willing to do that. But the question is whether it's going to jeopardize the project, and I guess that's a question for Mr. Wakeham.
Mr. Wakeham, can you weigh in on the timeline?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and directors. It is urgent. The timeline for this project is to complete by March 31 of 2019, next year. So I know BC Transit is waiting to issue the tenders for the first stage of site preparation. So they're just telling us they have a couple projects like this, and they're all very, very tight in light of the large grant that the federal government and provinces are offered for this project.
Thank you for that. Okay, Director Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too concur with what Director Morrison said in regards to this. I do believe that there is a greater benefit to the public in general when the buses are used, when they come in through this in a very safe situation. So I am in favor of voting on it today and carrying on with that message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we call the question? And this is electoral area directors only. All in favor? And opposed? Directors Dory and Kuhn opposed. The motion carries. So, Mr. Director Morrison, we can return then to
I believe that was
number 8.
Number 8, yes. 8.1, that a 3-meter wide public trail statutory right-of-way be registered in favor of the regional district over the eastern portion of Lot 2, Range 7, Quamachen Land District, VIP 20956 in the Coxsila Business Park owned by the province of British Columbia. 2, that a permit to construct agreement be approved with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to build and maintain a roadside pathway on the south side of Bull Road, and 3, that an unregistered easement between BC Transit and the CBRD for drainage across Maplewood Park from Lot 2, Range 7, Quamachin Land District, VIP 20956 to Boki Road be approved, and I move that.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Clement, and this is the entire board voting. Director Jackson?
I thought we pulled that and that it was referred to the next.
No, refer to table to later on in the meeting after we dealt with the issue that that the electoral area services just dealt with. So, seeing no more hands up, I'll call the question. All in favor and opposed? Director Jackson, Director Kuhn, opposed, motion carries.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. And as promised, I'm going to turn to Director Acton. Did you want to propose a motion in terms of a communication to the Ministry of Transport about, or Ministry of Highways about our concern about
Sure, we could
the entry?
highlight that. So I would.
Location of the entry
I
and whether.
propose a motion
Yeah.
requesting BC Transit reevaluate the location of the entrance to the bus depot and,
As from relocation from Bull Road to Pokey Road.
thank you.
And we'll craft that, if this passes, we'll craft that motion
Sure.
and get that off to them. Seconded by Director Dory. Any question on this? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we can move on to report and recommendations of the Regional Services Committee. Director
Your-
Yanni DiNardo.
Your Regional Services Committee report of the meeting held earlier today, your regional, it's 1, that a 25-year license of occupation agreement with Island Corridor Foundation inclusive of the City of Duncan, Municipality of North Cowichan, Town of Ladysmith, Town of Lake Cowichan, commencing January 1st, 2018, for the purpose of constructing, operating, and maintaining a regional park trail for public use to be approved. And 2, that a 25-year license of occupation agreement with the Island Corridor Foundation be forwarded to the City of Duncan, Municipality of North Cowichan, Town of Ladysmith, Town of Lake Cowichan for their concurrence as signatories to the agreement.
Thank you. That's moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Davis. Any question on this? Director Dory.
Yes, thank you. A question about the second one. Do they not just get the same say as we do when it comes to this, this license of occupation? Do they not just get to vote on whether they want to participate in it or not? We can't take the rights of Ladysmith or Lake Cowichan away from what they have.
And that's why the number 2 is it will be forwarded to those entities for their concurrence as signatories to the agreement. If they did not agree, then we would have to revisit.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Yanni DiNardo. We can move to report and recommendations of the Island Savings Center. Director Jackson. It's under number 9 and it's CR3 at the. Could you turn your microphone on?
Thank you.
please?
That a permanent part-time seasonal staff position replace the current casual staffing concept for the Island Savings Center Drop-In Center. That's the Youth Drop-In Center. And that the license of use agreement between Cowichan Valley Regional District and Flynn's Fish and Chips dated June the 1st, 2018 be approved for a 1-year term.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Walker. Any question on this? Director
Just to
Jackson?
follow it up, that this is, Mr. Elzinga can correct me, but it's not going to have any budgetary influence. It's just a rejigging of staff.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Director reports. Director Nicholson.
Did everyone read the report?
I hope so.
I think we have a significant safety issue in the Cowichan River Provincial Park that the residents brought to the attention of Electoral Areas Services Committee on May 2nd. And I find it interesting that we're talking about bullets leaving a gun range and lodging in trees, and anecdotally, bullets that have reached residences and bounced off roofs and pavement. And yet, the province has done nothing to shut the range down until it is safe for park users and residents. And so I am thinking that it's past time for us to send a letter requesting that some action be taken. What has been proposed so far is that the gun club, Parks has requested the gun club put up signs warning people. And I don't see the point that bullets actually read signs as they go whizzing by them. So I do think this is a really important safety issue for the residents and users of our parks, and I would like us to send a letter to the Minister of Environment about it. So I make that motion, that the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy be requested to take immediate action regarding public safety concerns as a result of bullet strikes on numerous trees outside the fenced area of the gun ranges operated by the Cowichan Valley Fish and Game Association.
I believe that was seconded by Director Acton. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has just come up. We had a presentation at the last Electoral Area Services, and I know when we had talked about other gun clubs here at this table, we actually had, it's good to hear both sides. I would like to be able to refer this back to hear from the Cowichan Fish and Game. I did some research looking this up. It's even on our CVRD Economic Development, and my family actually uses this range, and if there is a larger problem, there could be a larger problem without this facility when people have to have their guns scoped for hunting season and all that, and it has been there for a lot of years. So I just don't want to go on hearsay to a picture we saw with gunshots in a tree that could have been from anywhere. I think we need to be able to, as a local politician, remain neutral and hear from all sides. So far, we've just heard from one side, and I would like to be able to refer this back and hear from the Fish and Game Club, and possibly, like we had done with the Trap and Skeet Club, we actually toured it as well. So I think that that is something we could have a look at, and I know as well that the RCMP train there, you're gonna actually hire, there's gonna be more cost with them having to go somewhere else if we shut this down. And I don't know about, I hear a lot, and maybe Director Morrison can speak to it, out in the bush, it's lots of times there's gunshots going off normally, and I think without a regulated gun range and area and see what they're doing, that I believe that this is something that we should spend more time on, not going directly to a minister when I haven't heard all of the facts. So I'd like to refer this back to staff.
You're making a referral.
Yes.
Just a referral back for a staff
Back to
report,
staff so that
or-
we can hear from the Fish and Game.
Or an EASC meeting, or
I'm not sure where it would go.
Mr. Barry?
But I think that this deserves more information and an opportunity
Okay.
for the gun club to speak.
Mr. Chair, it would be back to the EASC, but Director Nicholson's motion isn't saying some of the things that would cause you to refer. I'm reading this, and Director Nicholson is saying that they be requested to take immediate action. Could be that there is no action for them to take. But basically, Director Nicholson is asking them to take a look at this. And in her report, because of the bullets and things leaving the property.
I still think that we should hear from, they're asking them to, it doesn't have to go directly to a
So,
minister. when
can
we
I
do that.
suggest you would like to refer the whole issue of this, safety concerns around this facility back to the Electoral Area Services
Yes.
Committee?
Prior to the letter,
Prior to the letter being sent?
yes.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? seconded by Director Kuhn. I have a list. Director Morrison.
I won't speak to the propriety of referral other than to say that I've got a motion, if it's successful, to invite the Cowichan Valley Fishing Game to attend, so.
Thank you. Director Marsh.
So I'm unclear, is this for electoral directors only?
No, this is a
Then-
board.
Then I don't know
Then
how that would be useful for me as a municipal director.
We're on the motion to refer. Yeah.
Okay, but I need to know if
They
I...
might provide, they might have more evidence at the Electoral Areas Services Committee and bring it to the board. If they invite the,
Well, if I understand Director Nicholson's motion correctly,
no.
so it sounds to me like, I don't know that, is it our job? We're not the RCMP.
Do you support the motion to?
No.
Okay, to refer?
Are you not allowed to say why you don't or ask questions?
As long as you refer to the motion to refer, that's the only thing we ask, not go back to the main issue.
And so I'm not permitted to say why I think I don't want to refer it?
No, that would be appropriate.
That was what I was attempting to do. Was I doing something incorrectly?
Well, you were, it sounded like you were going to talk about the whole issue of the. Yeah, but carry on and we'll.
Well, I'm just, I don't support the motion to refer because I think that if the senior level of government has jurisdiction over the safety of people shooting bullets, shouldn't they do the investigating? That's all.
Okay. Thank you. Director Acton?
Thank you. I do not support the referring it back. If these people have tried to contact the province and then they have gotten nowhere in regards to safety, and then they've asked us to have a voice in that and perhaps help them. All this is requesting is to check the safety issues that the concerns that they're having. So I think referring back in 3 weeks down the road, someone could get hurt, and we're holding this up for over a letter. So I'm
Thank
going to
you.
support.
Director Nicholson?
Well, I concur with Director Acton. It would seem irresponsible not to take some action on such a important public safety issue. On the question of having the gun club come and present their side, I don't think it's a question of sides. I think it's a question of public safety. And while it might be interesting to hear from the gun club, I think this is sort of outside of any of the other issues that the neighborhood has with the gun club or the gun club has with the community. I think that we really need to take some action on this. Otherwise, I would feel very irresponsible.
Thank you. Director Kuhn?
Well, I firmly believe even if it is just a letter we're writing to a ministry, before we do that, we should have to talk to the other party. We'd have to give them an opportunity to give us their side. It's only fair. And if at that point we decide, well, okay, we'll write a letter, let's do it then. But in any other case, if we are faced with any other decision like that, we always listen to both parties. And I think that's our job. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo?
Yeah, I just, taking this, I'm hearing that we're taking action, and that's on hearsay. We need to hear both sides. So taking actions, if there's bullets flying, we need to hear from the Fish and Game Club and what they're doing there, and if that, because we can't just go on hearsay that bullets are flying and that. We need to actually hear from both sides.
Thank you. Director Nicholson?
Well, if you're questioning whether the residents who went out and surveyed the park and found bullets lodged in trees and actually saw a bullet whizzing by them as they did so, then that's one thing. But the people that you really ought to ask questions, if you are questioning them, would be the firearms safety officer with the, I believe they're with the RCMP or whatever organization that looks after gun range safety. They'd be the people that you'd talk to, not the Fish and Game Club. That's like the fox guarding the henhouse.
Okay,
Or the mink.
thank you. I see no more hands up. So on the motion to refer, all those in favor? And those opposed? Directors Nicholson, Acton, Clement, Jackson, and Marsh. And no, so the motion is defeated. Director Morrison?
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. I got it backwards. The motion is approved to refer.
Yeah.
Okay. Director Morrison?
I'd like to move that the Cowichan Valley Fish and Game be invited to attend to discuss the safety concerns outlined in the director's report.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any question on this? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
To make a motion, if I could,
Director
that we
Marsh?
invite a representative of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change that would be responsible for regulating safety and firearms to attend that meeting.
Seconded by Director Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to bylaws when you're ready, Mr. Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First bylaw for electoral area directors only, bylaw 4204. That's the Development Application Procedures and Fees bylaw. First three readings.
Moved by Director Clement, second by Director Morrison. Any question on this? Director Nicholson?
I have to speak against this. I think the application on the transit facility is a good example, and I've seen even other examples where development permits, this would have a lot of the technical development permit applications bypass a second look by electoral area services and be authorized staff to deal with them. And while that may speed up the process, what's important about land use decision policy and decision-making is being able to check and monitor what you do. We don't currently monitor decisions that we've made. Development permits are kind of not a very good tool for trying to achieve some of the things we do. And I think that if we aren't aware of how these things work and whether they're working or not, and in the absence of any monitoring of land use decisions after the fact, I think it's important that these things are passed by a second look. It's sort of a check. If you don't see it, you can't ask questions, and you can't change policy if you don't know, if something's not working, if you don't know about it. So I think that it's really important until we have some sort of a land use monitoring system in place, which I imagine will be a few years down the road, that we keep a good, close eye on development permits applications. So I am going to vote against this.
Thank you. Director Davis?
I had a couple of questions about it, and I see Mr. Blackwell has left the room. So I guess I could say that in 8.2, I was wondering if 60 meters was enough distance to notify neighbors. So property owners who live within 60 meters only would get notification of this. We've had all kinds of issues and applications here where people live just outside that and they didn't know. So that's something I would like to change. I also had some questions about the fee schedule as far as environmental and geotechnical consultant. Does that mean, so
I'm going to
should
ask,
I refer this back to where it's bylaws? So
it's electoral areas director's bylaw, so to the EASC for further discussion.
Sure.
Do I have a seconder for that? I'm not seeing a seconder. Oh, seconded by Director Nicholson. So on the motion to refer this back, seeing no hands up, I will call the question. Electoral area directors only. All in favor? And opposed? Directors, Director Morrison, Director Clement, Director Marcotte, Director Kuhn, Director Dory, so that is defeated. So that, we're still dealing with the main motion as moved and seconded. Any further comments?
Well, his questions you can answer.
Director Acton?
I think it's fair that his question gets answered, though, before we
We
actually
can-
vote on it. So could we recess, or?
Mr. Keeber, can you find him?
We've been sitting for 2 hours and 40 minutes.
He's right
We
here.
could take a break.
He's right here. Let's, we're almost through the agenda. Director Davis, you have the floor.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions for Mr. Blackwell. One of them was in 8.2. It says 60 meters is the distance from an application that property owners would be notified. I was wondering if that was far enough. Like, we've had certain things that are, well, that could carry larger distances, like Rock of the Woods. I don't think that would be an appropriate distance, and I don't know if there's some sort of mechanism or a,
Flexibility?
yeah.
Mr. Blackwell?
Thank you, through you to Director Davis. So there's various notification procedures. One is in the newspaper. The other is, of course, through mail-outs or hand-delivered notices in some cases. So that number is set out in the planning procedures bylaw. There's nothing to suggest that you couldn't consider a motion to extend that further if you felt it necessary. But that said, I would go back to, standard practice, which is to post it in the newspaper more broadly, so that it transcends that 60-meter radius regardless with that newspaper notification.
And your other question, Director Davis?
Thank you. In the fee schedule about environmental and geotechnical consultants, it says $5,000, I believe. Does this mean that in the application, do they pay the CVRD
Director
to
Walker,
hire an independent consultant to look at that, or is it still under the same previous rules? It was unclear to me.
Thank you. Through you to Director Davis. I'm not sure I can answer that one. I would have to study what it was you were referring to, and I can't off the cuff answer that one. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. It's moved and seconded. Electoral area directors only. All in favor? And no, the referral was defeated. This is the main motion as listed in your agenda. All in favor? And opposed? Director Nicholson opposed. The motion carries. And Director Davis opposed. Motion carries. Okay.
And bylaw 4204 for adoption.
Moved by Director Kuhn, seconded by Director Marcotte. All in favor and opposed. Director Davis opposed. Motion carries.
Bylaw 4206, Eagle Heights Sewer System Service Amendment, a boundary extension, first three readings.
Moved by Director Acton, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
That's it for the bylaws.
Thank you. Unfinished business, verbal update from the CAO, the Parks and Trails Review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an update for the board, subject or further to discussions I've had with the board last month with regard to staff capacity, particularly in Parks and Trails Division. This is just to confirm that the initiative that the board had proposed to undertake a review of the Parks and Trails Division is going to be deferred until the new board. And I wanted to bring that up at this meeting, just to close the loop on that item, so that we will carry that item forward into the new term and undertake that exercise under the new board.
Any questions? Okay, Director Acton.
Yeah, I think just for, like, as a board, it would be really helpful to kind of have review or a list of all the things that we've kind of deferred to the next board? Is that possible to, easy enough to create, and so that we kind of have a plan, you know, we know what we're working on to finish here, and then we know what's going forward?
Mr. Crothers, you give us a review, a regular review, and I think you were planning another one in June, were you not?
Yeah, I give the board an update on the status of certainly my activities. It was intended to cover off our strategic objectives through our annual report that'll be issued at the end of June. But it would be probably advantageous for us to compile that closer to the end of this term to bring forward any outstanding items for the new board to consider as they start developing their strategic plan. So,
Thank you for that. Okay, so no new business items, so we can move to question period. Are there any questions from the audience?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I have a question for you, and I hope you can answer it for me. When the CVRD talks about public engagement, what do you mean? What does public engagement mean to this board?
That's a pretty open question. For me, it means trying to find as many ways and be as successful as possible involving as many of the public as possible in providing input before the board makes its decision.
Thank you. It's with great disappointment that the delegation of authority bylaw was passed, because that is taking away the public's ability and the director's ability to have input with the public, and delegates that authority to one office.
Okay, that's a statement where we are looking for questions in
Yeah,
question period.
and that was my question. I also have a question related to the Bull Road entrance to the BC Transit facility. It was a development permit variance request, is that correct?
Mr. Blackwell?
Thank you. It was a development permit application with a variance.
Yes, so,
Amazingly, they are different, amazingly, but.
yes,
it's
they are.
All in where, which position each word
Yeah.
is.
So there was a variance, and I think it was a good thing that the public spoke up and asked more questions, because nobody is disputing the transit location, but it was the entrance. And the entrance is not limited to just 26 buses a day. It also is the delivery schedule. It's when the buses go in and out for repairs as well. And what's very important about this too is this is a mixed-use area, and it is also affordable housing is contained within that too. My other question I would have is in relation to the Director Nicholson's request for a letter to be sent to BC Parks over the safety issue at the Cowichan Valley Gun Club within the Cowichan River Park. It is a safety issue. And I think asking it to be deferred and to hear back from the other parties is, if you want to hear their side, that's great. But it is very much a safety issue. And I also want to clarify that the RCMP are no longer permitted to use that range.
Okay, thank you.
And if it is a question, if in any manner, if a director has a family member involved in something, are they excluded from, is it considered a conflict of interest?
I would say it depends on the circumstances, and the director has to evaluate that for themselves. to decide if there's a conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else who would like to ask a question? Seeing no one coming forward, Mr. Evans, we can move into our closed session in 5 minutes. Moved by Director Kuhn, seconded by Director Stone. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
There's our girl.